Well, hello there. I was thinking about how I could intro to this episode. I gotta have something funny and interesting, right? Because I'm the funny and interesting guy. That's why I'm the Nest host, right? So I was like, all right, I'm gonna sing a song, right? I've been into some oldies recently, been playing a lot of Genesis while I've been running it down in the ranked queues. So I was like, all right, gonna bang it out. But the problem with that is I have the voice of an angel. So if I do that, I'm just gonna give Owlet a DMCA violation. And so instead of that, I'm just gonna give you this basic story about how I was going to sing a song, but you don't get it because you don't deserve it. Very unfortunate. We're starting off the show anyway. I'm your host, Mysfyt. Thank you for coming along to Owlet Season 3.9. This is going to be the second episode of The Nest. We finally got some regular season action. Everyone's got their vice. For some people, it's drugs. For some people, it's porn. For me, it is Owlet Season 3.9. I love watching Overwatch players play Overwatch. Why? I don't know. I just do. It's got me hooked. Overwatch has me hooked. In this show, we're going to go over week one, all the games that happened, all the forfeits, all the teams that have dropped. We'll talk a little bit about the meta, and we'll get into some power rankings. I am joined in the booth tonight with Waffles4Syd and Tropictheory. Casted a few games for us just this last week. How are you guys doing tonight?
Hey, happy to be on here and thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. We're, excited to be here. First time on a
hmm
podcast and here at the Nest as well.
Yeah, no, you guys are brand new to Owlet, just like our last guest. So why don't you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourselves?
Totally. I like to joke that we were best friends turned casters. It started with a once upon a time story where my Overwatch Funko Pop figures on my desk brought us together 2 years ago. And then here we are. We started our casting journey last October in 2020 with false appearance, actually. And the general manager, prepaid, ended up being our casting coach. And so our last cast with Owlet last Friday was our first cast away from home, if you say. So we are just full on life right now. Excited to be part of the Owlet community and team for casting this year
Upcoming
for
season.
3.9. There we go. Yeah,
Totally,
that's a little
yeah.
bit of our backstory.
Yeah, like she said, we met a little bit ago. I'm Waffles4Syd, and Traffic and I have been friends for a while, and I'm grateful that those little Overwatch figurines I spied on her desk encouraged me to walk over and, make a new best friend essentially into what has developed today.
All right, all right. So you guys are IRL friends. That I take away from that.
Yep.
Yeah, we are both on the West Coast over here in Northern California. So
Oh.
it's nice and,
Rainy
mild
right
out
now.
here. Still mild though.
True.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've also met quite a few people through Overwatch. Overwatch is a great, very social game. I do have to ask, you guys are a female casting duo. So, what are your thoughts on like women in esports and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a tricky situation for just like women in gaming in general. Right now, there's not a ton of us on the scene. There's more in the back, helping with the management and the production, and us as casting. But obviously, as far as the actual player base goes, there's not a ton out there. And it's a difficult situation because when you do get put on that platform, there's a lot of pressure coming in. There's a lot of eyes on you and these expectations that a lot of general players aren't experiencing, right? And until women in esports is a less novel experience, all that pressure is still going to be on them. So it's kind of like a chicken or the egg situation until it is more normalized that women are in esports. But, it's takes time and every time it happens it's yeah, so it's kind of a weird situation to be in as all around.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you have anything to add on that topic, or?
No, totally. I myself have taken part as a player. My highest rank was a master, so I was once upon a time on Winter Solstice as a master support player, and then I've also been on the other side of the team management portion. And so it's really similar to what Waffle said. And my perspective on it is I just try to ignore that part as much as I can. Though, of course, I'm sure a lot of females in just gaming in general could agree that that might not be something that you can really ignore per se. But you do what you can.
Yeah,
Not to let
no.
pressure get to you or,
Definitely,
affect your
yeah.
performance. Like any person doing a job or, any athlete, you can't let the strain of the game break your mental state. That's the big thing.
That
Definitely.
is very true. Mental state is very, very important in Overwatch. Thank you
Yes.
for that. That was very, very insightful. Let's get into our games. We did have week 1 come out. Unfortunately, we did have quite a few forfeits. We'll go over those now. Blues Clues Bandits versus Chinese Monsoon didn't get played. Chinese Monsoon has unfortunately dropped from the tournament. They're gone, so that counted as a forfeit. BCB gets a 3-0. Next game was Absolute Monstrosity versus Monarchy, also a forfeit. Monarchy has lost some players recently. Currently, I believe they only have 5 players on their roster, so they should be looking for one of those before they get into their games this
Ooh, yeah.
weekend. But our first game of the weekend was actually one that I did get to cast, and that was Council of Anime Girls versus the Barbecue Dads. And this is a cultural war right here. On one side, we got the weebs. On the other side, we have the Midwestern barbecuers. But unfortunately, this time it did go the way of the weebs. You hate to see it. As a Midwesterner myself, of course. But let's talk a little bit about this game. I'll start just because I casted it. I did get the first look at it. I think Hawk personally went crazy this game. I talk about Hawk all the time, and I for good reason though. Like he's a really really solid player. You can see some of his stats there. 16.6k damage per ton on Blizzard World. For those of you that don't know, that's a very high number to have. That's a very, very big number. He hits a lot of shots. Poplot's there, not dying a single time, and then everyone only dying 1 to 2 times on Volskaya. Council of Anime Girls was clearly in control of this match, getting 3 full holds after losing control. But what were your guys' thoughts on this? What looks did you see from each team?
I what's going on with some of these first matches of these games? That's what I want to ask as just overall. Doesn't seem like everyone's really taking it super seriously this first match. And, I want to see more of a crisp start from these teams. And Council of Anime Girls, that was the map where they went back and forth the most with Barbecue Dad. And uh, I was glad to see that they really cleaned up at the end against some of the other comps Barbecue Dad was running, but still mostly a brawly comp from Barbecue Dad.
Yeah, no, I definitely thought that was interesting. They had some very inspirational rotations on the Paul, especially when they were running that Bastion on Shrine. I thought that was really really funny, to be honest. I'm actually very very happy they were able to get the map win off that, because they definitely put more effort into the strategy there. But let's move over to you, Tropic. What did you think about this match?
No, definitely. Council of Anime Girls really showed their strength as a team, I would say. But Barbecue Dad, I think, especially with that play with Bastion, and also winning that fight as well, it really shows that they are not a team that should be counted against. Though the score shows like 1-3, it seems both like it was played out that both teams were really battling it out. But the reason why Council of Anime Girls were higher on my list was because, as we saw, those stats alone, even with just Mercy not dying, that is such a strong. Just that alone really shows how strong the support is. And I'm sure that Mercy's beam probably helped out with those 19 final blows coming from COAG.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So
absolutely. Poplots is a very, very talented player. I've mentioned this before, but he played in the South American Contenders Gauntlet. I forget what the
wow.
name of his team was, but
Oh.
he's a very, very
Mhm.
talented player. Our former T-Mobile MVP from Season 3 Minors. And he's definitely improved quite a bit since then. I think he's a very, very powerful asset to this roster, going to help a lot with the comm structure. Something I do want to point out about Council of Anime Girls, something that I really like to see out of them. I was their former coach, and something they really struggled with was coordinating their dives with that
Mm.
double off tank comp. But they were very, very clean with them against Barbecue Dads after that first map, of course. Alcura and Semper or Hawk, depending on who was playing the Tracer, they were all very, very clean on their dives. They were able to get a lot of kills in rotation, and they won a lot of fights off those dives. So I'm definitely happy to see how much this team has improved, and I look forward to seeing what they will do moving forward. But that's enough for that game. Let's get into our next one, which is a surprise for everyone. I'm pretty sure we predicted this game to be a 3-0 or 3-1, but our next one is actually be SpongeBob Mac and Cheese narrowly losing to Storybook Villains 3-2. We'll start off with you, Tropic. What did you think about this game?
Ooh, Storybook Villains, they have already that attitude coming in that they know their strengths, they know their mechanical skills. And so, they figure that this is just a warm up to OD or GGNA, which, that mentality could definitely really fault them in the end. And I think that this game in itself really showcased that. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese were the underdog for this game, but they put up a fight against it. And those storybook villains are higher on my power ranking list because of that raw mechanical skill set. This game alone really shows how that is going to potentially falter them. And that might be, this is way too early to say, but it could be that attitude could be their demise potentially. But the data doesn't just speaks for itself. How close this game was for both. And I'm always a fan of the underdog story. And so it was actually great seeing that fight kept going to a map 5 when it was already kind of vouched that it was going to be a 0-3 match.
Yeah, no, I definitely rank Storybook very, very high. I know some of the players personally. I've seen them in game, and they're all like very, very talented players. But I was also very, very surprised with how this match went. I expected them to come out and dominate, even on their like weird comps. They were running like some like Genji Ryan at some point. They're
Yeah.
running some very, very weird comps. And I expected them to be able to win anyway. But I think I overrated them a little bit on their mechanical skill. Because they definitely still have a ton of mechanical skill. I'm not trying to like take that away from them. But I thought it was much like the way they were acting when they came into this tournament. I expected it to be much greater than it was. But they actually, it definitely was not enough. They had to try to win this game. You can see from the scoreline there that they were down 2-1 at one point. And on those last two maps, I will give them credit. They did like full hold or take 2-0 on control. You can't exactly full hold control. But no, I was surprised that SpongeBob Mac and Cheese was able to hang with them, and I will highlight a couple of players. Aries, Nikolai, and Mustard Man all need a very, very solid award for their performance in this match. They all played very, very well on their individual heroes. I was really surprised, especially with Mustard Man. I love how he plays Pharah. He goes and he dives the hit scan all the time, which you don't really see happen in scrims much anymore because most teams are like used to that enough to the point where Pharah is not going to get away with that. But he kept getting away with it because he kept coordinating with his team. I thought it was really, really interesting scene, and they're definitely one of the more unique teams in this tournament. So I'm excited to see what SpongeBob Mac and Cheese can do in their later games. We'll throw it over to you now, Sid. What did you see in this game?
I actually casted this game with Beak right
Oh,
before I
right.
casted the second shift with Tropic. And so it was actually really cool to see both of these teams play and have it unfold, right as I was talking and, experiencing it. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese does practice these unorthodox comps. And you can tell that they know what they're doing, at least in this way and with this comp, because a couple of times Storybook Villains tried to match kind of the wonkier comps they were running, probably thinking, when, like Tropic said, that their mechanical skills and just raw talent can overpower SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. But they were definitely given a little bit of a wake up call on that front. It was not nearly as successful as they were when they tried to run their own Bastion comp. But, you know, once again, first game is not a great start off for them. And it took all the way to them, what is it, the other couple other maps later, until they actually got the fire to come back and win. Um, so I worry about a team that has such a slow start potentially. It's can be hard to come back from that. And when there's momentum, the other team can really roll on it. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been 2 goals behind, and sometimes you just cannot catch up after it's almost end of fourth quarter.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely true. Overwatch is a very mental game, and of course, being down a couple of points can definitely affect your ability to perform. So I do think that is an important thing we're gonna have to look forward to when we watch Storybook Villains is how slow they start, or rather how cocky they are when they get into games. We'll talk about them a little bit more when we get into their day 2 game. Let's move on now to Everfrost versus Cats with Hats. Cats, of course, unfortunately dropping from the tournament, and Meow Legion from Altitude will be taking over here. Unfortunately, we do not have stats from this game, so please enjoy this blank graphic that we prepared for you all at home. But we still do have the score line. You two cast this game, so of course I know you're gonna have a ton of insights on it. We'll start off with you, Sid. What did you see in this game?
Well, since Cats with Hats has no longer with us, we won't take too much time. But they did really good, all in all. Had a couple players who did stand out and put up a good fight. Unfortunately, not quite enough. Everfrost was just insane on the Wrecking Ball. So his name is Wrecking Ball, who also plays Wrecking Ball.
He
Okay,
does do that.
very nice and confusing. But he was just unstoppable, arguably, for at least the first little bit. Eventually, Cats with Hats was switching over to make counters for that, but at some point, you can't shut down a player, another player. You can only hope to contain them. And I think Cats with Hats did a good job trying to recognize that and continue containing Wrecking Ball. But that was all they could really do, was try to contain him. There wasn't really a stopping or shutting down. And Everfrost was hugely benefiting from the massive amount of impact he was bringing as far as zoning people and displacing the other team. Whole 9 yards.
Yeah, no, Wrecking Ball definitely a character you can get a lot of value on. Very, very survivable character, which means you can kind of play your own game, and especially when that's coordinated with some solid DPS, like we know Everfrost has. Blackstroke, Keandre, Logan, all very talented players. It leads to a very, very scary situation. Something I was very surprised about in this game is actually we saw a lot of brawl from both teams, which I thought was really funny. Brawl is not a composition that I rate very highly. We talk about like meta compositions right now, so I was really shocked to see a Ryan Zarya. I believe it was on Rialto. We saw a Ryan Zarya mirror. I thought that was hilarious, and yeah, I mean, to each team's credit, they played it pretty well. But like, they're running Brawl, dude. Like, why?
Yeah.
It was so confusing to me. But again, if it's not broken, don't fix it, and they were able to pull off a victory there. So yeah, we'll throw it over to you now, Tropic. I want to know your thoughts on this game.
Totally. We had the pleasure of interviewing Logan, who gave us a little bit of insight into their team comp up that round. And they actually, their main off tank was out. He actually, fun fact about Everfrost is that their off tank lives in Australia. So he is known for his amazing diva play where he eats grabs at 300 ping. So we did not have the pleasure of seeing them yet. So they were also kind of a man down in a sense. Logan, he did wonderful, but his only character he really plays strongly at with off tank is Zarya. So that's probably why they were happy to go Brawl to match Cats with Hats Brawl against it. But Syd also touched base on the nasty lineup DPS. I got to give a shout out to Blackstroke as well. He really played well with Wrecking Ball's chaotic ball play. We saw Wrecking Ball, of course, in the backline consistently making chaos for the enemy team's backline, which just gave Blackstroke so much space to just click heads all night. That's what we saw. So I'm pretty excited to when they have the full team, who they're used to playing. Wrecking Ball's used to playing with his off tank. How that team composition is just gonna go out.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited to see what they do moving forward. I think they definitely played better in this game than they played in preseason. And I'm excited to see what they can do when they actually have their Australian diva back. I like that Joey's decided to be a prankster and pull out stuff over the screen. Thank you for entertaining the viewers, Joey. I appreciate that.
I will also note that Everfrost had a really good. They were really good with changing heroes when they needed to. So I think that's also a really good artillery with flexibility of heroes within your roster to counter the team. Which Cats with Hats didn't really. We could definitely saw that they were really comfortable on that brawly comp. And so I'm a fan of Everfrost. What can I say now?
All right then. No, I definitely I don't blame you. They definitely did very, very well in this game. Well deserving of that win. Very, very close final map. I enjoyed every second of it. We'll now move into our day 2 games, and these are few and far between. Our first game that we have to talk about, of course, is Everfrost versus Barbecue Dads, which is not going to get played for a couple of weeks now. So that's a week 1 day 2 game that has yet to be played. We'll update you guys once we get a scheduled date for that. Blues Clues Bandits also got a bye. Meow Legion also got a bye. So we don't get to see either of those 2 teams until next week, which is very unfortunate. So we only had 2 games. One of them is being shown now, which was the rematch from preseason of Council of Anime Girls versus SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. And frankly, this game was, I will say, I also casted this game. Unfortunately, I had to bear the burden of casting both Council of Anime Girls games this week. Not a fate I would bestow on anyone, really. It's very unfortunate to have to watch. But this game is a little bit closer than a 3-0. I wouldn't say it was a lot closer because Council of Anime Girls was definitely the better team in this matchup once again. But it was not as dominant as their win over them in preseason. It was much closer than that. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese did look a bit better. Something that I do want to point out before I throw it over to you guys, though, is I think I've realized something about SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, and any of them can deny this in the chat whether or not this is true. but I think they actually have some availability differences based on Friday and Sunday. We touched on this last show. Beak, I believe, touched on this about how they have a different tank lineup in their
Mm.
second game. Right, they ran Jack on tank instead of on DPS in their second game of preseason, and I thought that was kind of weird. But I actually noticed something in their first game this week. Aries was on the ball, played very very well. He was not present in the second game, so I think that he just can't play Sundays. That would make the most sense. That's why they don't
Mm.
play him. And then Nikolai and Jack play on Sundays, whereas Aries and Nikolai are the tank line for Fridays. If that is the case, and they do have an availability differences, excuse me, I don't think the tank role is where you're going to want to see that because tank line is that's the role you need to have the most synergy with your partner. You can kind of get away with some differences in DPS and support, but the tank line needs to stay consistent with each other. So that could be a really, really big issue for them moving forward in the season if they do have to play with two completely different tank lines. But I still think they played pretty well in this game. I think they put up a good fight, but I think Council of Enemy Girls was just a bit too strong. So we'll start off with you this time, Tropic. I'm curious to know what you thought of the Weebs in this game.
Ooh, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese had the fun pleasure of facing against both the two top teams. So I got to give them credit there that they went ahead and made name for themselves. That we might be an underdog team, but don't take us lightly. We saw with Storybook Villains, and same here with Council of Anime Girls. Though it was a 3-0 in favor of Council of Anime Girls, they really did put a fight up. But you bring up a really good point too, Mysfyt, that like tanks are so important to be able to have some sort of synergy, even with your subs of DPS or support, because they're the prime people making space. So we might see that, Friday's game with Storybook Villains, it seemed like they had a little bit more of a stronger fight versus this game with Council of Anime Girls with the different tank lineup. So I am curious to see moving forward how SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is going to do. But again, with Council of Anime Girls, is it Plots? Poplots?
Pop
Poplot.
lots.
Poplots. Poplots and Hawk. Oh my goodness. I mean, I myself I love Mercy. I'm a Mercy player. And so seeing those types of data coming from a Mercy player like Poplops just shows how strong their support lineup is. And it's just yeah, I really think Council of Anime Girls could. I'm excited for is Council of Anime Girls versus Storybook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
How they yeah.
for sure. And I know they are very excited for that game too. They were not happy with how I placed them in my power rankings at the 5 spot last week. So they want to prove me wrong pretty bad. I do want to touch very briefly on something I knew about this game. I'm good friends with Blatman, the off tank of this team. He was my teammate for a very very long time, still a close friend of mine. And he gave me some insight after the game. Is that after the first map of control in this game, he kind of took control of Comseer. So I know he doesn't show up in our stats, which off tank rarely does unless we're looking at specific off tank stats. Mostly a role where you get value out of like individual plays rather than a lot of overarching value.
Yeah.
And Blatman is just an insane player. I think he's easily one of the most talented off tanks in this tournament. And I'm choosing now to highlight him because I didn't kind of dirty in the games. I don't highlight him enough in the games. His comms and his role on this team is as the rock, the glue that holds them together, that smart brain calling all the plays and doing all that jazz, right? So even though he doesn't show up here, I do want to give him a shout out now because he's an exceptional player and he definitely contributed to a win like this for them. So we'll throw it over to you now, Syd. Sorry for my little spiel there, but I do
No.
want to know a little bit about what you think about this game.
Honestly, it's always great to hear that the playmaker, the person helping make the plays happen and enabling the team, does get the appropriate recognition.
Mhm.
Because, it's DPS that's always flashy. And the saying goes, offense buys tickets, but defense wins games. Um, so, yeah, always glad to give a floor over there to the people playing some more defense on that end. Um, for this game, it was nice to see Council of Anime Girls clean up. I think just it looked like their fights in general were cleaner and crisper, a little bit better on the focus fire and ensuring that fights were wrapping up faster as well as far as the cleanup kills and coordination at the end of it. I think that's kind of where some of the struggle was in the beginning when we saw the other match, and also with Storybook Villains as well. Just that little ending bit that cleans it up nicely and gets you the clean cap all the way, or gets you the full tick versus half of it. And so that was the big thing I noticed coming out of here. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese just they did a good job. They've been doing really well. They have some tough games lined up for them. And if they are having that tank swap up and some of those factors playing into, their team and their synergy, it is going to be interesting to see what happens as we go down through this tournament in the season because it's only the second week.
So true.
And if you look at let's see, tomorrow's games are going to be great. There's some really nasty lineups coming up, and I think we'll get to see what teams are really made of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm really excited personally for the Storybook Villains versus Blues Clues Bandits matchup on day 2. That'll be an interesting one for sure. We'll get to see more of these teams going on. But our last game of day 2, week 1, was Storybook Villains versus Absolute Monstrosity, and this one did not go the way, just like last time we saw with Storybook Villains. This one did not go at all how we expected it to. I believe every caster projected this to be 3-0. And it was a 3-2 that went to map 6. Not only that, Absolute Monstrosity at one point was up 2-0 on Storybook Villains. And I watched this VOD back, and the thing that kicked it for me, right? They weren't running their weird comps here. They were not running their joke around comps. They were running legitimate, what we see in the meta, and they still lost 2 maps just to Absolute Monstrosity and tied another one. And this is the match that really solidified Storybook Villains in my placements this week for my power rankings. We'll get into that segment a little bit later. But the takeaway here is that I really don't trust Storybook Villains right now with the way that they're playing. I understand they're all very, very good players, but Absolute Monstrosity, despite that they played better than they did in preseason, was not a team ranked very, very highly. This should have been a game where Storybook Villains could, if they were projected, or if they were as good as we had projected them to be, they would have stomped this game, but they didn't. This was a map 6 game, very close series, 3-2, went for a very, very long time, and I think that it goes to show that I think Storybook Villains might not be the team that we project them to be. But we'll throw it over to you now, Syd. I'm curious to know if you agree, disagree, what you think about this game in particular.
I was really excited to watch this game. Storybook Villains was talked up a bunch. I had them ranked pretty high as well, based off of their previous mechanics and just some of the really big plays they were able to make, especially when it was crunch time. But Absolute Monstrosity, I thought, performed excellent against such a good lineup and consistently as well. They did end up losing in the end. Storybook Villains once again had the fire ignited at the very last possible moment. But all in all, I thought Absolute Monstrosity just responded well at trying to contain the different players of Storybook Villain, their tank and DPS. What is it? Like Cobalt and Kirby, if I recall correctly.
Yes, that's
They
fair.
were insane. And I think Absolute Monstrosity did a good job at trying to recognize and well, I think they were shut down for a little bit. Not totally, no one's ever completely shut down in Overwatch. That's not how it works. But I do think that for the first bit that they were not ready to be on Absolute Monstrosity's radar as much as they were.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I definitely think that's a good assessment. I think Absolute Monstrosity definitely made a name for themselves with this one, just like SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. And I'm curious to know, I mentioned this before. I do think Absolute Monstrosity is a team that can improve very greatly. They are a pretty newish team, don't really have a lot of synergy yet, and it's going to be a team that we see improve a lot during this season. I'm excited to see them already doing better than they did in the preseason, especially since they got my boy Hoopa57, a good friend of mine. But we'll throw it over to you now, Tropic. I'm curious to know your thoughts as well on this game. So yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
I mean, I already talked about how Storybook Villains are already we could call them the villains of Owlet this season. With their we already knew how confident they are in just their raw mechanics and their raw talent. And this is just really supporting my thoughts that that's gonna fault them in the end. Absolute Monstrosity really didn't have a name, but I'm really excited after seeing how they play together. They already matched the top tier teams in Owlet this season, so they can only improve from here. And not only did they match up to them, they almost won, going from a 2-0 and Storybook Villains, doing that reverse sweep. That shows quite a bit. But also on the flip side, Storybook Villains, we see how they aren't necessarily taking it seriously with maybe playing a little bit too lax per se, having the confidence, which is always great, but maybe a little bit too much confidence there, that they can just easy peasy win this 3-0. And Absolute Monstrosity made them, play like they need to. So
Yeah.
we see how their raw potential. We know that they can get together and output and play when they need to, but that's the catch right there, is that only when they need to. We're not seeing it just a raw potential come right out the gate. And another team, like if they, I would even guess if they got matched up against Absolute Monstrosity, really could take advantage of that. That, hey, we know that they're going to be really lax, so this is what we're going to go hard right off the bat. So
Yeah.
and they already
Solid.
forming, yeah, they're already forming that sort of like villain esque story within the whole season of all these teams, that I want to take storybook villains down seems to be the theme of what we're hearing from a lot of these other teams. So that again isn't coming so great into storybook villains favor, with having these teams already ready to take you down.
Yeah. And Tropic, I think you bring up a great point about teams trying to take advantage of some of the laxness storybook villains are bringing, and are opening up their maps with essentially a full court press.
Mhm.
Hard, full court press, aggressive and instigating. That's really all you want from a solid match. And they're coming out and swinging fast. Pretty much before storybook villains seems like they're all the way ready. If
Yep.
anyone's watched Attack on Titan recently, that's what you just saw that.
No spoilers, please. I'm only on season 1.
I was trying to keep it really
Oh.
simple there. I just said if you've seen it, nice and
All right.
Well,
easy. You should
I'm
Fair
watch
excited
enough.
for you.
I'll give you a pass on this one.
That's it.
All right. So that's going to do it for our run through of this week's games. Of course, our stats powered by overstat.us, which is the lobby code you see during our cast. Be sure to go check that out. Very, very useful. I've really enjoyed being able to have stats from this season. It is a lot easier to gauge how certain teams match up and certain players match up when we get to see the added bonus of those stats. So thank you to overstat.us for providing us with that code. But yeah, let's move on to our power rankings now. We have a lot of things to discuss. We talked a little bit about this in pre-show, but we have some very, very different ideas of how these teams line up. So I'm going to start off with my own, and I'm going to go through what I believe. My power rankings look very, very different than they did before. I actually have a couple more teams in my maybe tier than I did before. But let's start off with my top teams, because I know some people are not going to be happy with how I'm doing this. I am putting 2 teams that haven't played yet at my top of my power rankings. Why am I doing that? Am I just dumb? Well, the answer is yes, but there are other reasons as well. So Blues Clues Bandits, of course, I hyped them up going into this. I think there's a very, very, I think they're a very, very good team. I played against them in GGNA, very, very coordinated team, and this meta really suits their preferred hero pools. So excited to see what they will do moving forward. Of course, they haven't got a chance to play yet, but they do have that opportunity later this week to go against Storybook Villains. I think that will be on Sunday unless it gets rescheduled. So that's where they get to show how good they are, right? Can they beat a team that has been projected as the number 1 so far? And then we move on to Meow Legion, which is our brand new team in the division, replacing Cats with Hats, inheriting their record of 0-1. This team is a very solid team from what I hear. They have some players from my old team, Guangzhou Gambits, back from Altitude, namely Hudson 52 and Udi Duty. And even though I wouldn't rate those players very highly when they were my teammates, everything I hear about them now is that they are absolutely cracked, especially Hudson, right? Hudson was a player who kind of got thrown into an environment where he couldn't really improve. Guangzhou was not the best environment. The manager kind of forced a 12-man roster on us. And that really hurt our ability to improve because he was scrimming with different lineups all the time because we had to get everyone play time. And I'm really happy to see that now that he's gotten into an environment where he's more comfortable, he is being hyped up as one of the best ball players coming into this tournament. So I'm really excited to see how much Hudson's improved. He's definitely one of my favorite people that I've met through Overwatch. Udi Duty as well has gotten a lot better, expanded his hero pool, and I'm really excited to see that those guys have improved. I'm excited to see what their team does. And then I have Storybook Villains down a lot farther. They moved down from the 1 to the 3 spot because I just simply believe that if they go against a team that's as good, if not better than them, they are going to get destroyed. I don't think that they can do what they've been doing to SpongeBob Mac and Cheese and Absolute Monstrosity to every team in this league. It's just not going to happen. And
Nice.
so, yeah, no, I think that they definitely have some room to improve. And then there's Coag, of course. I moved them up to my contenders tier out of the maybe tier, and the reason for that is just because they looked a lot better. I had my concerns about their coordination going into this season, but they show that they are working on that a lot better. So I'm excited to see more from them. Obviously, a lot of friends on that team. I talk about it every time they're brought up, but they're a team that I do rate very highly to my heart, we'll say. Maybe if I don't rate them top tier in my power rankings. But yeah, that'll do it for my contenders tier. We'll move on to my maybe tier. I've got Monarchy, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, and Everfrost. Monarchy's down one because they've lost players. So even though they had a high scrim range and they are a good team, they have to work a few things out. So I think they are kind of in this wishy-washy place right now where we don't really know which way they'll go. Are they still in contenders? Are they now in that bottom tier? And we'll get some answers to those questions as we get into this next week of games. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, of course, they're kind of in the same spot, but now they're in a different tier. I had them in my probably not tier before because I didn't think they were contenders, but given how they played and the strength of their schedule, like you both mentioned when we talked about their games, I think they definitely have a chance to improve here. So I'm going to keep a close eye on them, especially with their availability issues, provided those are true. Everfrost, another team, I think they played very well, and I think they have a lot of potential. But the comps that they ran make me a little bit concerned. I don't think their comps will work as well against teams that are running more meta comps. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then for my probably not tier, I have Absolute Monstrosity and Barbecue Dads. And I know the Absolute Monstrosity one is probably going to surprise some people. But I think personally, based on what I watched from them, I think there was an element of luck in their close game with Storybook Villains. I think they definitely played well and better than I thought they would. But I'm still not ready to move them up too far yet. I can't write it off as anything more than a fluke yet because the way they played in preseason was pretty abysmal. I don't want to be mean there, but like it was just not good. They were not coordinated. There were people who didn't understand what they were doing. And this game, a lot of that stuff was cleared up, right? But I'm not ready to fully invest in my Absolute Monstrosity stonks yet. I need to see a little bit more from them. I need to see some more consistency from them before I move them up. But they're definitely on the right track. They played very well. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to put Barbecue Dads as my last team in my power rankings right now, much to their dismay. I know I'm going to get some flack from High Quality for that. Because I said I was going to move them up, and I did. I did move them up in my mind, but unfortunately, they did move down a spot. The reason for that is just that every team around them had a way better showing than I expected from them this week. So Barbecue Dad, even though I think they're better than I originally expected, they aren't as good as how I expect these other teams to play out. But of course, only seen 1 week. This is subject to change. So that's my list right here. We can throw it now over to you, Sid. You can explain your tier list, and we'll get this discussion underway.
Cool. Yeah. Um, so honestly, I wish I had relabeled these. I didn't realize you could. That's so nice. Noted for
Yeah, me
next
too.
time. But storybook villains, once again, I put them at the top because when they actually turned on their desire to win the game, they won it really well and almost really soundly a lot of times. And so that's why I put them at the top. I also put them up there kind of in hopes that other people would see that and aim to continue to try to dethrone them. Tropic is right. They are essentially kind of the Owlet villains that everyone has their eye on dethroning. And I thought that Absolute Monstrosity did a great job. Like we said earlier, Tropic and I are new to Owlet, so we don't have any like preconceived notions about what these teams have been doing a lot in the past or any of their other performances. But I was really impressed with, them and then their game against Everfrost as well. So I put all three of these teams actually, Absolute Monstrosity, Council of Anime Girls, and Everfrost in the same area because I wasn't entirely sure which rank they should be. Council of Anime Girls I thought did really really well and they had a lot of talent shown, but I'm not sure that their opponents gave them the full opportunity to advertise all of those different skills. So I kept them there because I just didn't want to quite commit, kind of like you and Barbecue or Absolute Monstrosity earlier. So I was just like, I haven't seen enough of what you've got to feel good about putting you up there yet. And Everfrost did fantastic as well. Definitely really great job against Cats with Hats, which was originally my next tier rank. Now it's Meow Legion. So to be honest, I would actually put them lower since I don't know how they do yet. But after that, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese did great against Storybook Villains as well, and Council of Anime Girls. They had, like we said, 2 tough games, and I think they performed really well, all things considered. Barbecue Dad's very strong there at the end, also had a couple tough games, but all in all, that's kind of where I'm going so far, keeping in mind what opponents they've been able to play against. And, it's only the second week of Owlet. There is a lot of room for upsets and growth.
Definitely true. Definitely true. Still a long way to go. We play the games for a reason. Power rankings are mostly just opinions at this point. We still need to get a lot more cold, hard facts about these teams before we're ready to be really decisive with these power rankings. That's why I have very, very general tiers myself. So yeah, no, we'll throw it over to you now, Tropic. I'm curious to know about your rankings. You two have very, very similar rankings. I did notice that. But you do have some slight differences. So why don't you explain those for us?
So first, shout out to Joey for working with my last minute changes. So hey, Joey.
Best producer today.
Yes. But I can't go against Storybook Villains with their raw talent and their raw potential. So I gotta put them at top. But at the same time, I also have Council of Anime Girls at the contenders level as well, because they are also putting their heart into it. They're fighting, and their stats are showing that. So I was really between putting CODG above Storybook Villains, but for now, we'll keep it right there. So in my head, they're really even. With my A tier, Everfrost and Absolute Monstrosity. Those were 2 teams that really, in my opinion, especially Absolute Monstrosity, I think they're contenders. I think they're underdog contenders, if that's a title, because their coordination and their flexibility and how they, for instance, Absolute Monstrosity played against a team like Storybook Villains really showed. And so we are only on week 2. So I'm giving the team some wiggle room to potentially push up to that contenders level. I think that their play this past week really showed that they have that potential. So we'll see if they, they watch some VODs this week, scrim some maybe higher tier partners in preparation for those Storybook and Council of Anime Girls level gameplay levels that we're all looking forward to. Meow Legion, I was really going back and forth. I probably should have put them with Blue's Clues and Monarch because we haven't seen them play. So I can't say a whole lot on that. But for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese and Barbecue Dad, that's it, right? Sorry.
Disappointments.
Yes, I was like, long name.
All these teams, long names.
Yeah, so we do have quite a few of them.
Wow. Do we have a character limit for team names next
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think we should keep it wide.
But
sorry,
oh no, you're great. I do love all the names, so props to all the teams, guys. But SpongeBob Mac and Cheese and Barbecue Dads, I put in that C range, the lower tier range, because for instance, Barbecue Mac and Dads, it seems like they were really brawly. That's their comfort picks, and that could really, even though we do have some meta changes now, that could really bite them in the butt later on. With just not having that flexibility to counter, really in a game like Overwatch can really hurt a team. And those SpongeBob Mac and Cheese did perform really well against 2 high tier teams. That team has been the only team that has win against Storybook Villains and Council of Anime Girls. And though they were 2 losses, they did put their heart into it. So I think that if they can, but the reason why I put them down there is also the tank difference. I didn't realize that you made a really good point today, but it kind of just showed within that Friday game versus that Sunday game, and so that could really be a downfall for them potentially. But I do still have hope that maybe they showed us what they got.
Yeah,
and if they really polish that up, I can definitely see that team just leveling up to that like underdog contenders that I labeled my A.
Yeah, no, for sure. Owlet, of course, from its core, is a tournament about improvement. So definitely excited to see that the bar is much closer than I expected. I expected to be, in most Owlet seasons, we've had like 1 or 2 teams that's just dominant. The only one that I can think of that was like pretty close was like Major Season 3, We had some teams that were pretty close, and I think they're 4 seed and ended up winning the whole thing. So that was a very close one. But usually, we have one team that dominates. I don't think that's the case this time around. And I think we've all brought up some points on why we believe that. A lot of these teams have improved. I think all the preseason teams look better than they did in preseason. So even in just a short time, we see a lot of improvement here. I do have to ask, Syd, I do have one quick question for you about your power rankings. You did put Absolute Monstrosity over Council of Anime Girls, even though very recently Council of Anime Girls did 3-0 them. What's your justification behind that?
It was right before I had actually caught that one, so I was a little behind on that front.
Uh,
But also, Council of Anime Girls, just the lack of diversity in opponents all the time against some of the stronger metas. I was just not quite ready to commit to putting them too high in general. Yeah.
No, I can see that. I definitely think their strength of schedule is something they're bummed about. They really want to prove how good they are comparatively
Yeah.
to our other teams in this tournament, and the fact they've started off with two of the teams that have been ranked pretty near the low. I know that they definitely want the big fish. They want that SBV game. They want that Blues Clues Bandits game. So I do think that's a good justification for it. We do need to see them against some stronger opponents before we
Yeah.
really commit to that.
And I mean, that's why Tropic and I left Blues Clues Bandits and Monarchy at the bottom. And, we should have moved. I thought it was Cats with Hats, but it's actually Meow Legion down to the bottom because
They're just
if we
unknown.
don't know what you've got, then sorry,
Yeah.
man. I don't want to discredit the other people on What If.
If I would have known we can relabel them, I would have put unknown.
Yes,
as my
that would have been
category.
a bottom one. That would have been
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
I take full blame for that. I should have explained how it worked when I sent you the link.
it's
I do want to make one more note for Everfrost being above Absolute Monstrosity as well, is that even in the game itself, they showed the flexibility when RB was finally getting countered with the McCree, and you saw that Cats with Hats was really like coming together as like a, hey, this RB guy gotta take him down. They really switched it up and really changed it up. So they can evolve within the game as well, which I think really shows a lot coming from a team, and even just shows like the background and synergy as a whole. So I have I have a lot of hope for Everfrost being up-leveling into that contender level.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that happening. We still again need more facts on these teams. Need to see
Definitely.
some strength of schedule stuff get figured out here. But I want to move the talk now over to meta. Right, we can keep the power rankings up because this does affect it. Right, there was a brand new patch today for those of us in the audience. I will go over those changes very briefly. Echo's tri-shot ammo was reduced from 15 to 12, so she now has less shots. Oh wow, I have the best producer. I forgot that he had this prepared. So yeah, there you go. That's here are the patch notes. The old patch was the patch that we were just on that all these games were played on, but just today we got the new patch with the Echo Tracer and Zen nerfs. So I'm curious to know, like, we saw some different looks from different teams here, right? And I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts on what's going to be meta on this new patch. I'll start. I personally, double bubble is what a lot of people have been saying. Winston wasn't very good on the last patch because he was just really easy to kill, really easy to burst down, especially with that Discord. He just melts really quickly. Like the Zarya bubble can purge it briefly, but that Zarya bubble is going to get blown up when a Winston engages. So that Discord gets reapplied right away. Of course, being an ability that has no cooldown. But now with Zen, the Discord damage being a lot lower, it seems like Winston's able to live a lot longer. So I personally watch a lot of Natter. He's an accomplished contenders coach, and he coaches this all the time. And he talks about how this composition is a lot easier to run, not easier to run. It can deal with a lot more things. But it is harder to run than the typical Ball Zarya. So I do think we will see some teams still opt for that Ball Zarya, that double off 10 composition. The thing right now that I'm really on the fence about, I don't know what our supports are going to be for this new meta. Because Zen just got nerfed. I've seen some people saying on a Brig. I've seen some people saying on a Mercy. I've seen some people saying on a Zen. I don't know what those people are thinking, but they're thinking something. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. What do you think we're going to see be the meta? Or what do you think we're going to see out of different teams on this new patch?
Ooh, I think that's been my question a lot right now too, is what the support lineup's going to be. I do favor the double bubble. We saw it exactly like you said. Just Monkey was just getting demolished, like eliminated last time around. But I think with this new Echo and Tracer, even and of course the Zen Discord as well, he potentially will have a little bit more more wiggle room to be able to do what he needs to do as a monkey. But as for the supports, I am kind of leaning towards that Anna Zen. I mean, excuse me, the Anna Brig. If we're seeing a lot more monkey, Brig is also a really good support to really play defensively and fall back on for Anna. But my thing with Anna is, shields. I'm an Anna player myself, and when Monkey comes in with the shield, I just know I yell in comms like, "Get out of the shield! Let me heal you. If you want to be healed, get out of the shield." And that could be such a problem for that. And Echo and Tracer, their nerfs in general are they really help with not being able to flank as much, or really Tracer's now even more, she's already a squishy character to begin with, but now she needs to be a little bit closer to the target to be able to get that accurate one clip, for instance. And same for Echo. The beam itself, even though it's just a 0.5 difference, that beam, when you have a target, especially a tank, and I know that's the reason why they did nerf it, because she was just so powerful against tanks. So I'm thinking that with these new patches, we could pull away from the Echo. Maybe we see a little bit more characters to play around with that monkey now. But I am seeing a lot more coming from the double bubble. But I also saw a lot of our teams not play that. I saw a lot of our teams opt into the brawly more. So it might not these patch updates just might not even affect them. They might just be like, "Oh, that's great. Okay, back to my Ryan Zarya."
So I do just want to clarify there. You're talking about false appearance, right? Your org.
Oh no, I
the
was
games
talking
we
about just the
saw.
games we saw. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, there was a ton of brawl run.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting personally.
Yeah,
I do too. Ryan right now, I haven't seen a whole lot of him played a lot, and so I think it's cool to see teams just go with their heart and go, we're going brawl regardless, and making it work, like Tim Gunn says.
Yeah, to chime in there, I'm not too confident that the beam reduction is going to be huge. I do know half a second is going to be a really nice difference if you're a tank, but if she's mowing you down and you're a squishy, she doesn't have her beam on for 2 full seconds. So I'm not sure how impactful that part will be the whole time. And then Hanzo Storm Arrow reduction, recovery speed reduced. Yes. That would be kind of the similar mow down laser effect that Echo does with her beam. So I was actually surprised that they brought that back up after doing that to her as well. I think we're going to see more Brig. I think the drop off from Tracer will entice people to play Brig, because if they are being annoyed by her, she's got to get closer. She has to get even closer and in even more dangerous territory. And like Tropictheory, she's squishy. She is the squishiest, arguably. So, really going to have to make sure that they're managing their cooldowns and recalls, and probably playing a safer, a bit more conservative game because of it.
Yeah, no, I can see that happening. For me, the question is the same as it was on last patch. Before it was Zen, what do you pair with him? Now it's kind of Ana seems to be what most teams are running with. What do you pair with that? And the question that I personally have with it is like, I think Brig can work, right? I don't think Brig is completely impossible to run. I think it does work. The DPS lines that people have been running on this new patch have been like Sombra Tracer, Echo Sombra, and Echo Tracer. Those are still like the main things people run with the double bubble, from what I have seen. But my concern is that, when we saw double bubble initially, right, back a few months ago, when it was considered like a counter to the double shield composition, near the end of double shield's reign, I should mention, Brig got that buff to her health that moved her up, that 25 HP buff, right? She doesn't have that anymore. She has 150 HP and 50 armor. And my worry is that, how does she survive a dive to her, right? If her Ana gets dove, the Ana nades herself, she gets an armor pack, she can probably live long enough for Peel to come and get that, or her team will find value before she dies, something like that, right? Depending on a lot of situational thing. Dive is a very, very nuanced comp. It's hard to explain every scenario. But now Brig only having that 200 HP, I'm worried that she's too vulnerable to a good dive. I think a good dive that comes at her, bubbles her off from her Ana. She can't stun through a Zarya bubble, and it's not very easy for her to break it herself because she doesn't do enough damage to really burn down that Zarya bubble. So if she gets a Zarya bubble monkey in her face and she doesn't get naded, that nade gets blocked by the monkey bubble. I'm worried she dies a little bit too quickly, right? So I think Mercy will have her day as well. She has Echo in a lot of these compositions that she can use to get away in the air. That res is really good because Ana would be the dive target if you were running Mercy, so your Ana would most likely die. You have the res to get her back up, or at least the threat of the res, which forces them to camp the body, things like that. So I think it is going to be something we see teams work with. I think, honestly, the most likely scenario is that we'll see a different support based on the comp. I think with the Sombra Tracer, you have to run the Brick. I don't think Mercy gets any value in that composition. She can't even really damage boost anything. The res is nice, but I just don't think there's enough. Your characters don't have enough uptime, right? It's not like Echo where you're constantly spamming and then looking for opportunities to engage. Tracer and Sombra kind of just flank. The Mercy doesn't really do anything for them. So I think the Brig will definitely be run. Those armor packs are great for those flank DPS. But I think when the Echo's in the picture, I think we can definitely see Mercy, especially on maps that have a lot of that vertical space to play with where the Mercy can get away with. But I'm really curious to know how these teams approach it. We could see them completely opt to not even do this. We could see some teams still opt for a Zen. I'm really curious. I think a lot of things could be viable on this next patch. I do think it will be map dependent.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I really think that it really opens the meta up a little bit more than it did. I think a lot of teams really felt restricted a bit to like what meta was. But we have a little bit more flexibility with supports. Before it was like really just Zen Bap, maybe some Zen Mercy, maybe Bap Mercy. And I think that you make a valid point with Brig, but I think it really just shifts her playstyle a bit, where she, her and Anna are going to be buddies, where they're protecting each other, and they're they got each other's back for those monkey dives, because I think a Brig and a Anna could potentially, especially if DPS comes back or a tank comes back, could really fight a Winston off and that dive. But coordinated dive also, that's pretty deadly, especially if we already have a flinky sort of like DPS comp. If they do run that like Sombra Tracer, where they're not going to be with their support, we're going to be reliant on maybe Zarya being potentially like right in the back line of how I also agree with you though that it might be really map dependent for like maps like maybe Volskaya. Maybe we do want a Echo to begin with to like pop in, maybe take that flank around to the left side with the Mercy to like really divert attention. But Zen could also be viable as well. So I am curious on how teams will take this and run.
I think it'd be super cool if the way characters were balanced in Overwatch made some things meta on certain map styles and other things less, more decisively on that front. Because right now it doesn't always feel that way. But I don't think Zen's going to completely be taken out of the picture because of the Discord orb is. I think the Discord orb is kind of an insane ability. You get increased damage from everybody and everything. That's just not like, I mean, you compare it to Mercy's damage boost. It's not anything remotely the same, especially if the other team is coordinating and focusing fire. The speed nerf being the same as the projectile, I think that it's good they made the decision to keep it that same pace and not anything slower than that, because at least Zenyatta players will have that fundamental on like how long it takes to traverse and throw the orb down to its location. So I'm actually really happy to see that Blizzard went that way with that versus, when the Rhine changes came through, a lot of Rhine players who had built those fundamentals had to retrain and redo some of their muscle memory, which, that is part of the Overwatch game. But I was nice to see that they fell back to that type of speed instead of really like nerfing it to the point where you had to create new muscle memory. I'm also really excited to see the changes for Sigma and what that's going to bring. 2.5 seconds is a huge jump from 1 for shield redeployment. And that means that every time they choose to deploy their shield, it's going to have to be much more thoughtful, tactful, intentional, and with purpose. If they are slinging it out there willy nilly, then they're not actually going to block the key abilities they need to, like, either the storm arrow or the nade or sleep dart or any of those, right?
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
Especially the opposing accretion. That's another one that you see just thrown out. And there's a lot of shield baiting that goes on with Sigma. You pop it out one, try to get, and then you break it down. You're like, okay, haha, it's open. Just kidding. Now I've blocked your ability. But 2.5 seconds is enough time for players to easily say, oh, shield's down. Ready?
Go, go, go.
You don't even have to
Yeah.
say go, go, go right away. You can go, ready?
Mhm.
Now, which is huge. That's
Take
a
a
lot of time
take a
in
breath.
Overwatch. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
And so giving that extra time, I think that that's going to increase the difficulty of playing Sigma in general. And anytime you do that with an ability and you increase its cooldown time, it's more difficult to play the character. But um, yeah, I'm really excited to see that Sigmas can't just pop their shield up willy nilly, block this, block that. It's
Yeah.
yeah, they'll be more intent with it.
Yeah, no, and we did see a little bit of that on the last patch. With Zarya became kind of the often more paired with Ball. We still saw Sigma have his value on maps that have like a lot of high ground. Zarya has no mobility other than her right click things she can do, but that's not true mobility, right? And Sigma is just so powerful on those high grounds, especially on defense, right? You think like Dorado, think like Rialto, where there's a lot of really useful high ground for Sigma. Even with that shield deploy issue, if he's fighting someone on low ground, he can just back up and wait for his shield to come back. So he still saw some play there, but I think especially with this double bubble changing, Winston can get on him a lot easier. And cut off his support a lot more. We saw on the last patch that Ball Sigma, right? The Zen, the Brig, and the Sigma would kind of play together, and they would stay safe, right? Because they could protect each other. They all had abilities which could keep each other alive, right? But Winston is a lot better at like cutting that off, right? When Winston's in his bubble, he can't just be burned down. One of the benefits of Zen Brig being there is the stun, the Discord, and Zen shooting you in the head with the Sigma damage as well. Anything that gets on there and gets stunned is going to die really quickly. If a ball tries to roll through willy-nilly through a Sigma Zen Brig, he's going to die very quickly. There's a lot of damage there. So
I think you make a really valid point too, because Sigma's also another part of his kit that's so powerful is his E or his pretty much
clutch
Eva's
defense
defense
matrix.
matrix.
Yeah,
exactly.
Black
and so
hole?
yeah, black hole. So
Void?
monkey can't really absorb monkey's weapon. So he's just going to be eaten. It's really going to be a battle of who's going to kill the person off before, or if monkey's going to be able to jump away before he gets punished. So I think you make a really valid point there.
Yeah, no, I definitely expect to see Sigma pretty much out of the meta completely. I think we will see differences between I think we could even see some Diva, honestly. I think Diva is I saw a pro player, I forget who it was, they made a tweet about how power crept Diva is. She got that health readjustment where she now has 300 armor, 300 health instead of 400 health and 200 armor. And she's also gotten her defense matrix buffed a little bit. Over the course of the last 6 months, the timer to do it is now shorter. The cooldown's been decreased, so she can keep that up more often. So I definitely think we will see some Winston Diva, maybe even some Ball Diva. Some teams ran that this week, namely Coag, Blackman, a very good Diva player, of course. So, I do think it's up in the air. I do think Sigma's kind of gone for the meta for now. He's still a very dangerous character, even in ranked. Being an off tank that can duel DPS and win, have the favor in the matchup, is a really, really scary thing to have. So I think he still will be viable there at least. But I think in the top tiers of play, he's pretty much gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I do think that you make a really valid point with Diva. She's really, she has that mobility to get on the high ground with her boosters. She has the DM that can eat a plethora of different ults. So if somebody plays her really well, she is a menace to be reckoned with. So I definitely can see, especially if Winston is going to be more or less that prime main tank, for instance. Teams could definitely, if they aren't not really filling the, double bubble, definitely viable to go that full dive with Diva Winston or even Ball Winston. I played Diva with Ball before, and it is a challenge with coordinating those dives in. I mean, just dive in itself is a challenge to just coordinate the dives. But another really viable, especially if people are missing that that powerful E that Sigma has. such a viable option to just use DM.
Yeah.
Well, and her mobility and agility to
Mhm.
peel when needed is also huge. And I would
Yeah.
actually love to see, a little bit faster teams or team comps. And what I mean faster, just people with those movement abilities who we see take a little bit bigger risks here and there. I don't necessarily think a strong bunker comp or a brawly comp always is like, okay, let's go for this, side gutsy play all the time. That's just not the vibe of it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think we brought up a lot of interesting points here. I'm curious to see how the meta will play out. I think, especially in this league, when we've seen some very interesting looks from teams, like the Farah dive from SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, or the willy nilly stuff that SBV's been running. I think it will depend on team. I think we will still see a lot of variety from these teams. I really do like. I know the meta isn't perfect right now. There are people who don't really enjoy it. It's not in the best state. But I will say at least it's not one comp every time. I think there will be a lot of differences, and I'm happy that we are getting a change, a breath of fresh air into the meta. I'm excited to see what teams do and take and run with this. But I think that's going to do it for us tonight. We said quite a bit of things. We've gone for a very, very long time. Do you guys have any parting words?
I just want to thank you, Mysfyt, for having us on here. It was
Oh, you're
awesome to
welcome.
be here for our first podcast. You're a kick-ass host, all right? So
Hell
don't let
yeah.
anyone tell you otherwise.
Oh,
Of
don't
course,
worry, they don't.
well, I don't know. I think our producer Joey might here and there, but shout out to them as well. They were fantastic. Thank you so much for setting all this up for us, and I'm super excited to continue casting through the rest of Owlet with Tropic and whoever else may need us to step in and jump in there here and there. So yeah, big thank you and just super excited and grateful to be brought on to the Owlet team.
Yep. Sid pretty much covered it, so ditto. And just really excited. Can't thank y'all enough.
Yeah, absolutely. We were definitely loved having you on. You guys both did a great job. You had some really, really insightful stuff. I definitely great guest. So thank you very much for coming on. I look forward to watching more of you two cast. I really, really like your energy. So thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
No, for sure, for sure. So yeah, that's gonna do it for us tonight, folks. Thank you all for coming out and bearing with us for the whole hour. If you missed any of it, the VOD will of course be up, so feel free to go back and check it out. Absolutely, again, special thanks to Owlet and to Overstat US for providing us with the stats. Thank you for Silent Marine and Arish for doing all the work to put together those stat cards, and thank you, Joey, for being the man behind the scenes that we don't get to hear. Does a lot of good work for this podcast, and I really appreciate having him on here. But that is going to do it for us tonight. This has been episode 2 of The Nest. Thank you all for coming out, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.